I'm looking at wealth, I'm going to see all the opportunities in my future. Whereas if I'm looking at debt, I'm going to be like, look at all the mistakes I made. I can't make those again. And I miss all the stuff out here going like, hey, here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity. Because I'm just like, oh, I can't screw up like that again. What if I make the wrong choice and hire the wrong person again? That limits me from all this potential out here. So, you know, you have those everyone has those moments, right, in their life where you feel a little bit stuck, or you catch yourself doing the same pattern. You're like, I was trying not to do that. How did I do that again? And maybe you put all your effort into changing a habit, but then after you stop putting all your effort there, the habit comes back. So what I do, or you're still angry at your old relationships, and then you start getting into new relationships, and that old relationship keeps coming up and you're not sure how to navigate that, because we heal relationship in relationship.
Hey folks, welcome to Finding Fuscata. I'm Sean. My next guest is Dawn Bennett. She is a life coach and relationship coach. She specializes in relationships. And if you check out the description below, you'll see links to her websites where she's got all kinds of amazing resources and some free training special that she's got going on right now. I think that you will find her as warm and welcoming and engaging and helpful as I did. And if you stick around to the end, I've got a special guest who showed up for a brief visit that I think you'll really enjoy. And so without further ado, here's Dawn Bennett. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so let's get serious. Let's talk business for a second. So I'm noticing a trend in the folks that I've been getting in touch with. And there seems to be people who have a background in massage therapy who started to notice the mind-body connection and then decided to pursue and start to think maybe, working on the body isn't necessarily the be-all and end-all to help these folks. Maybe we should work on the mind and work on the spirit and work on the nervous system and all the kind of stuff that you talk about at length on your website. And I'm curious about your perspective on that, of how the nervous system in particular can affect our lives, but then also the mind-body connection. Like how do you kind of think all that stuff works together?
Here's the way that I break it down. So have you ever been into an anatomy class? Right. So we look at the body.
Long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So you look at the body, and then you could say like, okay, here's the respiratory system. Now we break it down to the lungs. Now we break it down to the alveoli, and we break it down to smaller and smaller bits, which can be very helpful for understanding what are we talking about? Where is quote unquote the source? Like if I have an infection in a certain area of my lung, it's helpful to know that. But if I'm not looking at the body as a whole, I'm doing a disservice, right? And so this is kind of the mind-body connection is for so long, anatomically, emotionally, in psychology versus doctors, we've broken things down into parts and forgotten about how all things work together. So for example, the nervous system is affected by our thoughts. It's affected by our emotions. The nervous system is part of our body. So our thoughts and our emotions are affecting our body and vice versa. So it's not so much that, look at this fantastic new thing. It's connected. It's always been connected. We've just spoken about it differently. And I think this is where we're looking at, are we breaking it down into smaller parts? Are we pulling it out to a larger perspective? And we can still do both. But the skill lies in having the flexibility to do both. Like right now, I'm going to talk about my sadness. Right now, I'm going to talk about how I feel the sadness in my whole body when XYZ happens. Right now, I'm going to talk about this incident in my life that impacted me. And now I'm going to go back global and talk about how, when I think about that incident, I feel it, or how it expresses in the way that I interact with my relationships. So it's really about being able to do, in my opinion, it's about being able to do both, right? The mind-body connection is, at what level am I turning on the magnifying glass?
Do you know, are you familiar with Sadhguru?
Yes.
I
don't watch a lot of his
guy.
stuff, but he's so funny.
He is. He's hilarious. He's hilarious. Uh, he talks about he talks about that specialization that I remember him. He was given an example of like dentistry. He says, if we keep letting this go, then we'll have, somebody will specialize in just, your the left canine incisor and like the one particular root nerve. And and that's great that you can have these people that know so much about that one particular thing. But then how does that help you when, you're a whole entire person, because his whole thing is not his whole thing, but the drum that he bangs on a lot is soil health, which seems completely unrelated. When you look at it from a sort of a westernized materialistic point of view, you think, well, what does the soil have to do with anything? I'm trying to, drive my car, and I'm trying to watch Netflix, and what does soil have to do with anything? But then his argument is that the soil is where we get our food from, and if you're not taking care of the soil, you're not taking care of the flora and the fauna and all those things that live within the soil, then you're not going to have good food. And if you're not having good food, then you're not going to have a good body. And the whole thing, kind of builds all the way up. So that one thing ends up becoming foundational. And so as you're talking, I'm thinking about that foundational aspect of the same way the soil kind of, builds up. And I wonder about, it makes me wonder about our thought life, and how does that, what are your thoughts on that? Like how does our thought life affect that? Where does all that kind of stuff tie together?
Mm-hmm. So have you ever heard of the like belief, perseverance, and confirmation bias? Have you ever heard of those terms?
Belief, yeah, I believe so, but unpack that for me.
Yeah, so if we're going to break it down, so we talk about confirmation bias, and confirmation bias is this lovely thing where we see what we already understand. Our brain is always deleting, distorting, and generalizing information so we can process the world around us. So confirmation bias is, have you ever, let's say you decided you were going to buy a car and you're like, oh, no one has a red Honda, so I think I'm going to get a red Honda. And then all of a sudden you start seeing red Hondas everywhere. And you're like, oh, I thought everyone had gray Hondas. Why are all these red Hondas showing up, right?
Yeah.
It's because you've shifted what you're looking at, and your brain goes, no, there's one here. No, there's one here. There's one here. So this happens in our
Isn't
life.
that the reticular activating system? Did I say that right?
Yes.
The RAS? Okay.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
And so that's confirmation bias. It's kind of whatever we're looking at is going to show up more often. Same thing happens in relationships, for example. If I decide that, my husband isn't doing XYZ and he's treating me in XYZ way, I'm going to see that. And studies show that I miss up to 50% of the positive things that he does because my system is looking at what I'm asking it to, which is the not so happy things. Now we've got belief, perseverance on the other side, which is despite everything that I'm being shown, I'm going to stick with my belief. So this works for us in really great ways, but also really not so great ways. So if I think I'm a really great cook and everyone says I'm a really great cook, and then someone comes over and says your meal sucks, I can be like, okay, so they didn't like my meal. I still believe I'm a good cook because, right? If I think I'm a really great driver and I've gotten into 2 car accidents and I have 5 speeding tickets, I'm like, no, I'm still a really great driver, right?
Now you're just delusional. Yeah.
Yes, but this is our brain's method of protecting itself as well, of creating our identity, of creating our way of being in the world. So our thoughts create our reality. Wherever, like the saying is, wherever focus goes, energy flows. So whatever it is that we're focusing on, consciously or unconsciously, will be what our awareness and our attention is going to. So some of the spiritual masters will say, you don't manifest what you think about, or you don't necessarily manifest what you're trying to manifest. You manifest who you are, right? What are my thoughts on a day-to-day basis? What is my energy? What is my intention? Am I focused on the scary things? Am I focused on the positive things? Because that will determine where my energy is flowing, which will determine what I'm bringing into my life. It determines the people the opportunities I'm allowing myself to see.
How do you think emotion ties into that? Wait, let me
Because
clarify a
I
little
could
bit.
go off on like
So
5 tangents there. So I'm
right.
curious.
So that's kind of general. Let me narrow that down. My understanding is that, and what I've coached people on, what I've said is that instead of thinking of it as where attention goes, energy flows. It's more like your where your intention goes. Not attention, but intention. Like wherever you're putting your intention, wherever you're putting your concentrated energy of care is where energy flows. Because like I've used the example, like I can give attention to my phone, like I'm paying attention to my phone right now, but nothing's gonna happen. It's just there. But if I start to really care about my phone, I start to make YouTube videos to review phones, and I start learning how to repair them, and I build a business, then that, because now I'm putting my intention and care driven attention into that, and then that's when the energy starts to flow out, right? But then, so I guess the thing I'm looking, here's the thing I get tripped up on is that if my care driven attention is on that, but then if that's motivated by fear, or if it's motivated by anger, or if it's motivated by something else, then the thing that blossoms out of that is going to be laced with whatever that emotion was that I was putting into it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think so. That's the thing I'm trying to sort out here too, is like, how does that happen within our nervous systems, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think, well, just to put a last kind of capping thought on that is, I've noticed in my life when I'm trying to manifest things, I'm a manifesting machine. I can manifest stuff all day, every day. It's all I ever do. But if I'm in a place of fear, or if I'm in a place of lack, then the thing that I manifest has that sense of lack along with it. Or if I'm in anger, then the thing has a sense of anger that comes along with it. You see what I mean? So I'm wondering, like, how does that work in the nervous system? Like, ah, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, and I think what you and I are saying are very, very similar and very overlapping in the way that I could sit and meditate and be like, this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to make these YouTube videos. The energy of it, if it is in anger, if it is in fear, that's really where I am or who I am at the moment, right? Like
Mm,
if I'm, so for example, if debt's this way and financial wealth is that way, I can
right,
run away from debt and I'm still getting closer to financial abundance, but like all my focus is on that debt. It's all fear. It's all
right.
worry. Or I turn around and go, okay, how can I get there so that goes away? And now my energy is going that way. So we're going the same direction. Just what are we focused on when we're getting there? And so to your point around, or your question, I believe, if I'm answering this correctly, around emotions, is the more we're in a space of like a positive intention of clearing the emotions, of being centered from our heart rather than fearing in our mind, the easier, quote unquote, it is to get there,
Mm,
or the more aligned it becomes, right? Because we start, if I'm looking at wealth, I'm going to see all the opportunities in my future. Whereas if I'm looking at debt, I'm going to be like, look at all the mistakes I made. I can't make those again. And I miss all the stuff out here going like, hey, here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity. Cause I'm just like, oh, I can't screw up like that again. What if I make
mm,
the wrong choice and hire the wrong person again?
mhm.
That limits me from all this potential out here. So is that more clear around like the emotion? So the emotion of the fear and the worry is kind of focusing on past almost, in my opinion. Not that
Yeah,
aren't going to all interweave, right? Because we can't just be in one spot all the time.
yeah, that's true.
All these things are playing in a spectrum.
Yeah, it does. And I wonder now, as I know a lot of your expertise is around relationships too.
Mhm.
And so I wonder how that plays out. Well, I'm wondering how that plays out in relationships, in romantic partners and sexual partners, and friends and family and all that other kind of stuff. Um, how do those patterns kind of reverberate through the other people that are in your life? But I guess we'll
Mhm.
focus particularly on romantic relationships.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever been in a really bad relationship before?
Have I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much
And
time do you
then,
got? I got stories.
right. And then have you gotten out of
See all
that
this gray hair? Yeah. All this gray hair.
relationship?
Yeah, this is from bad relationships.
Right. Have you ever gotten out of that relationship and just said, I will just, the next person I choose is not going to have the qualities of that past relationship? Right.
Yeah, but then the funny thing is in my life, so I'm recovering alcoholic,
Mhm.
and I'm that guy where I could walk into a room with 10,000 women, all of them like just lovely and highly qualified and wonderful and eligible. And the one woman who had chemical dependency and sexual trauma would like run over and slap a wedding ring on me. Like that was,
Right. 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 Because when you
she would just
attract
like,
it,
she would just like move into my house. You know? Like, oh, hi. I
amazing
guess
manifestor. Well done.
interesting. So, but they always have the best senses of humor anyway, but what are you gonna
And we can look at that multiple ways. You could say, okay, I'm still in the energy of the old relationship, or that's the energy that
do?
I'm carrying. Right. Like my significant other has been sober for 44 years. I was like, well, at least I picked one this time that's actually functionally sober instead of, you know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
still alcoholic, but this one's actually like really sober, like woo.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
And working on it, working the steps all the time.
Yeah.
So, but isn't it interesting that I do like same thing? I attract people that have that energy. Like there's something either in me that is excited by that or something in me that's resolving that. Like I can't separate what's karma, what's past life, what did I learn in childhood, what
Yeah.
like we like once again, are we going to narrow it down, be like, well, what is this, let me fix the root cause? Which yes, there are root causes of things, and we can also come at it from a broader space, being like, what do I want? So I know
Mm.
that, for example, in my relationship, I want someone playful, I want someone communicative. I had 5 things that I had defined in very, very clear terms from a class I had taken. um, and then I looked at how they treat me, and then we look at chemistry, which is the opposite of how people look now. Right now we're looking at chemistry first, and do they have, like, are they nice, are they gentle, are they, no, what are the
Yeah.
5 traits I need, say 5, in a long-term partner, like forever, that if they lose the
Mm.
job, they still have these things, if I have children, they still have these things, or if,
Mm.
well, right? So what are the core traits that are really who they are, that will
Mm.
sustain a long-term relationship? So once I started looking at that, that changed my whole dating life. And with relationships, it's the same thing. Are we running towards or away? If I want to break it down super simply, am I running away from the destructive, alcoholic, guy who was fun? We had a lot of fun. We did all this, we did all that. Or am I running towards the love, the communication, the whatever? And am I
Mm.
clearing my emotional state? So every time my current significant other does something that I don't like, or something that resonates with something that somebody else does, am I going to be like, oh, look at that awful thing he just did? Instead of being like, okay, everybody does that. How strong is my emotional response to that? Because if I can change my
Right.
own emotional responses, that's going to shift the whole relationship as well, right?
Yeah, that reminds my father always used to say one of his like canned things that he always said and just got drilled into my head is your response is your responsibility, just all the time. That's like words to live by. But how, I guess, so the thing that I'm not quite tracking on then is I see a lot of people who are in the new age and the coaching and the manifestation world and whatnot, and they talk about that they call it the SP, the significant person. Like if you're trying to find that significant person, or you hear a lot of people that are saying, if you just do like XYZ, you do this, this, and this, you can get your ex to come back to you or whatever. And knowing what I know, like they're probably your ex for a reason. And yeah, so don't come to me for that kind of coaching, because I'll tell you to steer in a different direction, babe. But um so I guess the thing that I'm thinking about is that, well, here, let me tell you what happened with, in my experience, what I did. And it was 2010 or so, but I had, for a long time, uh I had this image in my mind of who my ideal partner was. I could see her in my head. I could see her build, her hair color, eye color, like every detail, like how she dressed, her sense of humor, everything about that. And uh but I kind of fell into one relationship who wasn't this person who was in my head, but I kind of fell into that relationship. Then I got, like guilt, and then there was a child, and then there was, marriage and complications, and then that ended. And but then I did it again. I fell into another relationship, and there was like marriage and children and all that kind of stuff. This is over the course of my military career. And I don't know if you know this, but 9.5 times out of 10, when you get married, your wife wants you to like be home sometimes. And when you're in the military, that doesn't always work out so good. So apparently, like 2 years in Iraq isn't great for a marriage, like who knew? But but here's one of the things that I noticed is that when I met my wife, Kelly, now, when I first saw her, it was like it clicked. I was like, oh, that's you. Like she was like, if somebody had taken a const like that thing that was in my head and like made an act, like 3D printed a real person, it's Kelly. And I've often wondered about, I'd like to get your take on this too, is that especially in relationships, even though I met these ladies, and we had closeness and friendship and all that kind of stuff, there's always that thing in the back of my head where I was like, this isn't quite what I was looking for, you know? And I've often wondered if that's kind of what they sensed, or if that was part of the reason what maybe even led to me, being in the military and not trying to be there all the time, like right now with Kelly, like you couldn't get me to go somewhere else where Kelly isn't. I want to be with her all the time. Whereas when I was married before, you couldn't get me to stay at home for more than 6 months because I just wanted to be somewhere else, So I wonder, yeah, I wonder, what do you think about that? Like those kinds of like attractors and repulsors, and like those sorts of energies that work within us. What are your thoughts on that?
I think good relationships are easier than we're told that society says they can be. Society makes it sound like relationships are all about drama and,
Mm.
and really, when, to your point, when we're like, well, they're pretty great except for this thing. Now, is
Mm.
that thing like a trait that we need, or is it like, I wish they worked out a little more often? Or like,
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like something that, okay, well, I can kind of get over someone not working out 5 days a week when I want them to, because that's their thing.
Yeah.
But if they can't listen with compassion, that's a big thing. Like that's a
Mm.
trait that I need. And I think where I see a lot of my clients, a lot of people out there, when I do dating and such, work with people, that they do themselves a disservice is they're afraid to be alone, or
Mm.
they're taught by society that there is not that person out there. So even when I teach my class and I say, okay, here are the things that you've decided that these are the 5 traits that you're looking for, like don't settle for less. Because if you settle for 4 out of the 5, that fifth thing is going to be the thing that breaks you up. And they'll literally
Mm.
talk to people about all the traits they want in their significant other, and people be like, there's no one like that out there. So we're already trained to believe that those good people aren't out there.
Mm.
And it creates a sense of, I think, desperation or hopelessness, or, well, this is good enough, so I'm going to stick with this even though I know in my heart this isn't right.
I'm trying to think of any place where I've seen something that I could call training, where we're trained to believe this, or could it be more like just maybe like a lack of self-worth, or like, I'm not, for some reason that's not quite resonating with me. Tell me more about that. What do you mean by trained to believe that?
When I say the word trained, what I'm saying is whatever we listen to or see over and over and over again will eventually will start aligning with that belief. Right? When
Mm,
we hear a statement over and over and over again, our unconscious mind patterns it in.
mm,
And so therefore, if I'm deciding to be, let's say on TikTok, and I'm watching a bunch of drama about, women like bears better and all men are narcissists, where's my brain going to be focusing on? Where's my confirmation
oh, okay.
bias? Right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about training. Not that someone is out there going like blah blah blah, but that the insidiousness of the things that we watch sometimes is so subtle that we forget that we're involved in this level of drama, or that there are different things. Now, you look at like I was talking to a friend at a networking group, and he was telling me about this, red pill or whatever. And I'd never heard of it because, of course, my feed's all full of like the Gottman Institute and love and positivity and all this stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I miss a lot of the things that actually my clients are struggling with and that they're seeing, because they're looking
Mm,
at things like, is my ex a narcissist, or how to avoid a narcissist? And so that's what's showing up. And then what are they focusing on? All the narcissistic people.
mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, everyone out there becomes a narcissist. And then what are they attracting? The narcissist.
Right. Yeah.
Unconsciously. And it's completely unconscious. This is not to blame. This is
Right.
not whatever. But once again, if we're not focused on, like, for your point, you had this vision. And what did you bring in? You brought in the vision.
Right. Yeah.
But you
I
believe the vision out there. You felt the peace, you felt the love, you felt the potential. You aligned with that mind, heart, body, soul, nervous system.
mm,
But you became that in a way because all of you was congruent with that, and then it showed up.
yeah. Yeah. Um, I just a quick aside, but
Yeah.
you were talking about, you mentioned that that meme that was going around. Would you rather be in the woods with a bear or a man?
Mhm.
And there's a lady that I follow. She's a men's rights advocate. I forget her name, but maybe you've seen her. She's got like tattoos down her neck, and I think she's great. She cracks me up every time. She says some really really controversial stuff, but she cracks me up. But anyway, her response to that meme was, all right, well, hey guys, if you were in the woods, if you were lost on an island, who would you rather be with, a dog or a woman? And the comments are all like, oh, a dog, a dog, a dog, But then one person in the comments wrote, actually, I would choose a woman, because if things got bad, and we got really hungry, I'd hate to have to eat my dog. I was like, okay.
Yes.
But to your point though, I can see where, like, if you're living in that world, like my middle son right now is kind of living in that world where he's 22, and he's interested in finding a partner, but then he doesn't really want to, and he's trying to focus on his career. But then all the females that are in his age group and in his social bracket are they're lesbians, or they're uh what's the word, not transgender, or they identify as something else. And or they're just, they politically don't align with him, or they have different views and different strategies and all this kind of stuff. But then he also does, like you said, where he gets kind of spiraled into these red pill moments, and I have to like talk him down from the ledge sometimes, and say like, well, that's not how everybody is. That's not how everything in the world is. And this thing that you're seeing is largely a construct of your beliefs and what you're putting out into the world and how you're presenting. And you're going to start to bring all those sorts of things in. And I think little by slowly it's starting to click with them. But yeah, I wouldn't want to be. I would not want to be dating these days with all that stuff. Because it's like there's so many high quality people, but then it's almost like people don't, they not only do not see their own value, but they also don't see the value of potential partners.
Mhm.
Is that what you're seeing too?
Yes, and we don't know what we're looking for. Like when I work with
Yeah,
clients, sometimes people are like, well, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want that. What do you want? I don't want that. Well, what do
right.
you? And I think it really serves us to focus there as well.
Yeah. When I met Kelly, she was a heroin addict.
Mm.
And I mean, here in New Jersey, you could hardly throw a rock without hitting a white girl who'd been a heroin addict, you know? And in the early 2000s, it was really, really bad.
Mhm.
But she had, and she'd gone like all the way down that dark road, you know? And when I met her, she was already in recovery. She'd been sober for a while. And I'm an alcoholic. So it's like, hey, we're a great pair, you know? But and my ex-wife had been an alcoholic too. So when Kelly told me that she had a problem with heroin, I was like, "But do you drink?" And she's like, "No, I can't stand this stuff." I'm like, "Cool, let's go on another date." But because you can't just you can't just go down to the liquor store and get heroin.
Right.
You got to like you have to decide that you're going to go do that. Whereas for me, I pass 7 liquor stores on my way home from work every day. So I'll still I've been sober for almost a year now, and I'll call Kelly sometimes. I'm like, "Hey." I felt my head was just looking at Cramps Liquors. I was driving by. I really, really want to get a rum chowder right now. She's like,
Mhm.
"No, you don't." Blah blah blah. Kind of talk me down from the ledge. But I say all that because when when Kelly and I first met, we were both just a field of red flags. It was red flags as far as you could see, but the green flags were really big and really bright and very visible amongst all those other red flags because the green flags for me was like we had a very similar sense of humor. We she it was like there was something about the way that she interacted with animals that I was just really drawn to. She's just very, very deeply compassionate. She was had a fantastic relationship with her mom, and her mom is beautiful and just kind and generous and warm and just like all these amazing things. She had a very, very close knit family, so it was like these are the things that I was looking at that were, like you said earlier, if we were both broke, like when our teeth fall out and the sex doesn't work anymore, and like all these things that become like the facade of a relationship, when those all melt away, the fundamental things that you still have is that crazy awesome sense of humor, that generosity, that kindness towards those who need kindness, you know what I mean, and the just that deep connection that's there, and like everything else, who cares, it comes and goes, you know and that was a fantastic experience for me too, and it hasn't been easy, it's been bumpy, but I wouldn't trade a minute of it. Well, there's a couple minutes I'd probably trade, but
But those were the learning and growth experiences,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. I was like, I could have just gotten like a pamphlet on that, maybe.
No, you wouldn't have listened. You've been like, I got that.
Yeah, I don't need to watch that. It's fine. Just show me a YouTube video. I'll be fine. But
Exactly.
so, so tell me more about unified mind. Tell me what is in the unified mind?
So, unified mind is really representing a variety of things. So, it's my company. Um, but what I look at it is how are we unified with ourselves? So, our conscious, our
Mm,
unconscious, our emotional state, our physical state, but also how do we unify with others? Because my belief, the way that I look, like my value system of the world, like I remember when I was young, I used to look at people's hearts as they walk by. Like when couples are holding hand, I'd look at their hearts and be like, I wonder what that feels like. And I was so
mm,
fascinated by it. And I had actually forgotten that until recently, that was like my
mm,
obsession when I was a child. But our core purpose here beyond survival is to love. It's to
mm,
be connected to another human. And even when, right now everyone's talking about attachment styles and secure attachment, or at least that's what's showing up on my feed all the time. And I've heard people start to be like, oh yeah, I'm hearing about, I must be anxious attachment because I saw this meme on it or whatever. Um, but attachment's so core, right? And so
Mm,
like you look at Maslow's hierarchy, relationships is third up, but relationship is also tied to survival.
mm,
Part of a herd, you need to be connected to somebody in a way to survive.
mm.
And obviously there's like the food and shelter, but for a lot of people, even right now, a single income household is bringing us back to, I don't know if I can survive without another person in my, so there is a way that is
Yeah.
actually kind of tying back in our society, unfortunately, right now. And not that I just want to say relationships are about survival, because they're not. And that need to connect, that need to be loved, that need to feel value, that need to be worthy, that we're allowed to feel when we're in a secure relationship is so vital to the
Mm,
rest of our growth. And so I feel like when we are able to come to our own self-awareness and our own ability to connect in a powerful way,
mm.
right? I mean, yes, we learn from every connection, functional or dysfunctional, right? And everybody has their own soul path. And so I'm not saying like, oh, everyone has to have the perfect relationship. That's also not what I'm saying. But where my mission lies and where Unified Minds mission lies is, how do we have people have more powerful relationships, to listen to each other, both in an intimate relationship, but also our friendships? How are we taking a stand politically? Can we have conversations still about that and agree to disagree? Or at least see like, okay, I get that you grew up this way and your brain works that way, and I grew up this way and my brain works this way. And therefore, we want the same solution. We're
Mm.
just coming at it from different angles, right? It's like even stepping
Yeah.
back to COVID. What does everyone want? Everyone wants their family to survive and be safe. So whether I choose to vaccinate or not vaccinate, I'm looking at how is that going to help my family survive and be safe? Like we're both looking at the same thing. We're just seeing different aspects. We're getting different things from society. We're reading different information. We have different beliefs around what health looks like or our immune system looks like, right? But we both want the same thing. We don't want anyone that we love to die.
Yeah.
We can bring it back to that core. It connects us again in humanity in such deep and powerful ways. And that's what Unified Mind is about. How do we do that?
Mm. I love that. I heard an interesting definition of materialism recently. And in my mind, I had always thought of materialism. Like if you say somebody's materialistic, in my mind, the stereotype is that they're, pursuing the cars and like they want to have like hot people in their life and they want the money and they want like, I think of those as materialistic things, which it is. But then the view I heard a few days ago is that you can push that a few layers deeper, and then it's not just about accumulating wealth and materialistic things like we think of. It's just being attached to matter, being attached to, instead of being attached to ideals or being attached to spirit or being attached to your own higher self or like the higher self of consciousness of humanity. When you're focused on those sorts of things, it's like Jesus said, he said, he was talking to, I forget who it was, but they were asking him about how do they get the things that they need. And Jesus said, don't worry about what you're going to wear or what you're going to eat or where you're going to live. Don't worry about those things, because those things will come to you if you focus on righteousness, you focus on the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus said, when you do that, then all those things will be added to you, and that you won't have to do that anymore. And um it's not about, yeah, but anyway, but that's the whole thing. I'm just kind of still trying to knit this together in my mind, that this is something that I've always known, that when you focus on the unreal and the ethereal and the more important than the spiritual, then those things will come to you. But then, you know what? Actually, now that I'm thinking it through, I realize I haven't really thought this through all the way.
Yeah.
It's funny.
And
Well, that's the thing. Here's the thing I'm trying to sort out is, right. I was raised in a Christian church,
Mhm.
and starting in 2006, I'm sure you've heard a lot of people around the same time period, like I started my spiritual awakening and blah, 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 right? Mine started in about 2006 when somebody handed me a copy of a book called A Course in Miracles. Have you heard of that? So I got very involved with that. And I started to ask a lot of questions about my Christian faith that just couldn't be answered. And I went to, theologians and pastors and nobody had answers to my questions, but I found answers in A Course in Miracles, and I found answers in the Law of One, and I found answers in these other sorts of places, but I still have these Christian roots. So I still pull a lot of my knowledge from that. There's still some beautiful teachings from the Bible and from the Gospel of Thomas, and there's some amazing things in there they still resonate with me. But at the same time, I'm realizing now that a lot of those lessons I never fully integrated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, making my focus on the kingdom of heaven, as it's called in the Bible, will bring all these physical things to you, these material things to you. And even kind of now, as I'm speaking, I'm realizing that I'm much more materialistic by my own definition than I ever thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So I'm wondering too about, like, but in my mind, it all comes back down to the nervous system again, doesn't it? And how our thoughts affect our nervous system, right? You're smiling like I'm onto something.
Yeah. Well, we've actually just had this conversation recently. So I'm like, this is so awesome how things show up over and over again, kind of in the same rhythm. Because it is something worth exploring. And I have a couple of different things to play with for you and your listeners around that. And one of them is when we talk about our nervous system, when we get anxious or depressed or worried or fearful, what are we doing? It's because we're trying to control the outcome. We think that, to give an example, I think that to get a relationship, I need to do X, Y, and Z, and my relationship needs to look like this. And here's where I'm going to find them. I can't find them at a bar. I can't find. And so now I'm going to control. I think I have all these thoughts about exactly how this is going to look, what it's going to look like when I get there. And I don't just follow. I don't just trust. I don't look at the kingdom of God. I don't look at whatever it is and say, okay, here's what I want. I trust you to get me there or better. Sometimes we also think we know what we want. Like, have you ever gotten angry because you didn't get what you thought you wanted? You were trying to manifest something, and then you're like, whew, thank goodness that didn't show up. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Because sometimes
yeah.
we're so busy trying to control, or you can put it this way, play God ourselves in our own lives. And what does that do to our nervous system? If all of a sudden we have to play God, our survival, our everything is all on us and our brain and our nervous system. And now we're trying to take it all on, and we're scrolling through a bunch of different things, and our nervous system's overwhelmed. Whereas when we can sit back and say, okay, here's what I'm looking to get. I'm going to take here's my intention. Let's say, put it this way. Here's my intention. My intention is X. My intention is to have a nice house, to find a beautiful wife, to live a joyful life, to give back to society, to, whatever it is, to stay sober, whatever. Here's my intention. What are the actions I need to take to get there without controlling how I think the outcome should look like? Because now if I let go of, well, I have to do it by doing 7 YouTube videos a day, and the videos have to go like this, and I have to get so many likes, and all that pressure. And now and it didn't get it. And now, and God's forsaken me, and everything's wrong. And I must be awful. And I'm not worthy. If I'm just like, okay, and this is the hardest thing to do. I mean, I do it too, right? We all do it. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm doing all the things, and nothing's working. And I get all in the drama, and I get all anxious. And then I'm like, okay. Yeah. I've created a timeline and what I think it should look like, but that might not be the right timeline. Maybe I have one more thing I need to learn before I can help those people. Maybe I need to be settled in a house, right? Because right now I'm kind of between 3 living situations, and anyway, that's going to change at the end of the week. So it's great. But I've been kind of up. First I was nomadic on purpose, and then I was uprooted not on purpose. So part of me is like, I'm doing all this stuff. But then part of me is like, but where's my energy right now? All my energies. I'm living in 3 different spots, and I'm trying to do all the things. I'm trying to control my life, and I'm trying to How about I just step back and just trust? that things will move forward, and I don't get to control the timeline. So I think,
Mm,
so like to your point, like to the nervous system, like that's I think where the nervous system gets involved with our desires and with our actually ability to find a relationship or to manifest. And
mhm,
to the point about kind of the Christian roots to spirituality, I think where my Christian roots to my spirituality are all coming back together is someone said to me, like, what would you imagine God to be like? Like, write down all those traits. Now make that your God.
mm,
Because who
mm,
says that God has to be the Christian God? Because we were taught certain things. And if you look at the history of any religion, there's an element of control that happens inside religions as a structure that need
mhm,
that happen over time, right? King James did this, blah, 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 blah. We could go, I'm not going to go into the history, but every religion has some of that in it. So if we just trust in our heart that God is who we think they are, how does that serve us? How can we step forward in that? And then, like, leading with our heart, because when we trust in something higher, whether it be God, whatever, universe, whatever you want to call it, um, the earth, the planet, we trust
mhm.
the rain will fall, maybe, or we can go find water somewhere, maybe most days. Um, it's easy to say coming from Minnesota, it's rained here for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We just came out of a 4-year drought, so we're all like, whoo, thank goodness. But also
Wow.
there's cycles. Yeah, I kind of got a little bit into the weeds there. And I think you kind of hear what I'm saying is that,
No, I'm hearing you completely. I think that one of the big lessons I've been practicing in my own life is both. It's a combination of radical submission and radical detachment from outcome.
yeah,
Just absolute, just submitting. And which was something always hard for me, especially, coming from a Christian background. They're like, you gotta submit to Jesus. And I'm like, I don't, this whole Jesus thing makes no sense to me. It never did. Like, I don't get it. But now I'm seeing like, oh, I have to uh well, I know for a fact, just if you look at the course of my life, when I take over and I make a decision that I'm going to go do something, it inevitably just turns to shit. That's just that's how it goes. Unless if I'm repairing something, then I can do it. If I'm driving somewhere, I can plan those things. The if what am I trying to say? When I use my brain for what my brain is intended for, it works great. If I'm fixing something, if I'm building something, if I'm, navigating somewhere, if I'm picking this fruit versus that fruit, my brain is fantastic. It's very, very good at that. But when my brain is picking a partner or picking a life path or picking, some bigger course of action or adopting a philosophy, if I let my brain get involved with that, it's not gonna end well, you know? And but that kind of ties back to the when you focus on the kingdom of heaven, then those things will be added to you. And that's kind of what's happening in my journey right now with this podcast, is that I for a long time I was all wrapped up in my limiting beliefs of not feeling worthy and I couldn't really do it, and perfectionism and wanting to have like just the right microphone and just the right camera and just the right everything before I did anything. But then I remember hearing Jordan Peterson talking about, you have to be willing to begin poorly. Yeah, or else you'll just never begin. And so it took me a while to get past my ego and say, all right, let's start doing this. But even then, kind of to your point, is that I had to begin poorly in order to find my direction. Does that make sense? Because I had an idea of where I wanted to go. I have a vision of where I'd like to be like in the future. But if I start navigating and say, we're going to take this step and then this step and then this step, it's not going to work out for me. Right. Because I thought that I wanted to be a coach. I thought that I wanted to, have all these businesses. But as I start taking steps down this path, I realize, oh, I'm talking to a lot of people who have a background in massage therapy and notice a mind body connection. And that's really interesting, and then other people show up and they're like, oh, I'm a veteran and I'm working with this, or I'm in recovery and I want to have a discussion about this. And So that's just me radically submitting and saying, okay, I have to submit to sitting down in front of a microphone, in front of a camera, regardless of the quality, and just start a conversation. And then, and because that's my first step of submission, and then start moving wherever that takes me. But as long as I have to be continually doing the thing, whatever that thing is, and it keeps unfolding, then but I can't be attached to the outcome. You know what I mean? Like, I can't say like, well, we only going to talk about baseball, or like we're only going to talk about, like you have to let things grow and flow. I was talking to somebody earlier about this today, that it's a young lady that she cuts my hair. And so she's a sculptor, and every time she cuts my hair, I have to remind her, I'm like, you're a sculptor. You're sculpting people's hair all day long. And because she's working on these art projects at her house, and but she's fascinated with sculpture, and I'm like, well, that's what you are. Like, you're an artist. That's what you do. You create. You have to keep moving forward with this kind of thing. Anyway, I kind of got off track a little bit, but yeah, that idea of radical submission and being detached from outcome that's been a huge lesson for me. And it's what's starting to actually move my life forward. And little by slowly, I'm finding more joy. I'm finding more fulfillment. The financial rewards haven't started flowing in yet, but I'm sure they're right on the horizon.
Right.
But it doesn't matter though, because I'm not doing it for money. I'm not doing it. I mean, I'm literally doing this for free right now. I just because I love having fascinating conversations with awesome people. So I'll just keep doing that. If somebody likes how I do it, maybe they'll pay me for it. Maybe not. I don't care. But I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life because this is what I love. Right. But anyway, but let's go. I want to go back to more to the unified mind. So because we got about 15 minutes left, right? 15, 20 minutes left, because you got a hard stop today.
I do. Yes.
So tell me more about what you do at Unified Mind, because I know that you've got a bunch of different programs that are available. You've got coaching, mentoring, different perspectives, like all that kind of stuff. What do you offer?
So my specialty is working with emotions. My niche is relationships. So that's kind of how I like to frame it with people. So I work with anybody, you have everyone has those moments, right, in their life where you feel a little bit stuck, or you catch yourself doing the same pattern. You're like, I was trying not to do that. How did I do that again? And maybe you put all your effort into changing a habit, but then after you stop putting all your effort there, the habit comes back. So what I do, or you're still angry at your old relationships, and then you start getting into new relationships, and that old relationship keeps coming up, and you're not sure how to navigate that, because we heal relationship in relationship. So what I do is I help people.
Wait, what was that last thing you said? We heal relationship?
Heal relationship in relationship.
Why? I don't.
Okay, so
that's not registering with me.
So imagine this. So you and I are dating, and then we have this awful breakup, right? So I might go off and I might do my tapping, and I might see some healers, and now I feel okay. Now I'm calm, and I'm over him, and I'm ready to get my next relationship. When I get into my next relationship, there are going to be some things about being in relationship that remind me of you're in my relationship, no matter how healthy or unhealthy this new relationship is, right? So there's parts of relationship that we can't heal on our own. We must heal when we're in a relationship.
So the way I'm interpreting this is that if you are, say you're a runner and you get a running injury, you have to go to physical therapy to stretch the muscles and tweak stuff together, and maybe put a splint on and heal up and everything like that. But you aren't going to be able to get back into running unless you get back into running. And through that physical therapy, you're going to learn how to move better, how to carry yourself better, how to distribute your weight better, all that kind of thing. And then you can take those skills into your next time when you go running. But ultimately, the purpose is to go and start running. And like, your real healing and moving forward is when you've done this back shop work, if you will, and then you get out and start running again.
Yeah,
So that's how I'm interpreting you heal relationships in relationships, right?
absolutely. And there
Okay.
are some things that are only going to come up in relationship that I'm not aware of as well.
Hmm.
Right. So you're running and then you realize, like, oh, when I turned to the left, I didn't realize that was my problem because I've been running straight back and forth all the time. And I thought
Hmm.
that was my problem, was just running. But it turns out that when I run to the left, I'm using my body a little bit differently. Right. So the
Hmm.
same thing. Oh, I thought that I was upset at my ex because of XYZ, but I just noticed that same trigger happened, that same emotional response happened in a completely different context in my new relationship. So what is it that I'm
Hmm.
actually sensitive to that's showing up
Yeah.
in relationship? I thought it was X, but really it's Y. So there's a little bit of those nuances that can only be healed in relationship. Is that clear?
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
both and. We get to do our own work, and some of that work won't become clear until we're back in relationship again.
I have found that the exactly what you're talking about is one of the many reasons why marriage is so important, because you can get a girlfriend or a boyfriend and have them in, but until this is how my brain works. When I like go before my conception of a higher entity and my family and her family and all of our friends, and we dumped a whole lot of money, and we wrote a bunch of paperwork, and now there's tax structures and there's a house and there's kids, and like it's this huge complicated thing that's almost impossible to break apart. When you start getting into those things and you have to face yourself and you realize that, like, oh, this thing that's happening is because like I keep screwing this up, then when you're bound to somebody like that, uh and you come up against your own shortcomings, it forces you to have to work through it and say, all right, well, this is we're in this together, babe. Like, this is what's happening. Like my wife and I, we didn't put this in our wedding vows, but it's an agreement that we have. I told her that I said I will not divorce you. I said I can't promise that, there could be like I might murder you, but I will not divorce you.
That's
Like we are like
right.
we are making this happen one way or another. I may have to end up in jail for something insane, but I'm not going to leave you. And she said the same. She's like, oh, definitely. She's, I would totally murder you before I left you. I'm like, great. We're in agreement that this we're carrying this forward one way or another, right?
Right.
But but it's been amazing for us though, where we just, no matter what we've been through, like whatever rocky patch that we hit, we always know that we're like, okay, we're solid, we're secure, like this is a stable thing, and we're both mature enough to realize that, like, okay, well, this is a thing that I need to work on in myself, like I'm realizing more and more how I just throw like absolutely, infantile baby fits sometimes when like little minute things don't go my way, and I'm like, wah, it's not what I wanted. And I mean, in my head, I'm like, I'm self-righteous, and you're supposed to blah blah blah. But from the outside, I'm like, yeah, it's not my way. You know? But the thing is, like, without having that absolute firm commitment that we made in front of, God and her family and our friends and everything like that, I'm not sure that I would have had to force myself to develop the emotional maturity to be able to wrestle those things within myself, and then also to have somebody there that I know is just going to be there, and I can say, hey babe, um I can feel myself, I can feel it like a baby temper tantrum coming on here pretty soon, so I love you. This might get ugly for a couple minutes, just give me a pacifier and I'll shut up. You know?
And how beautiful, right? Because now
Yeah.
we're not making up stories about it. And that's the big thing that happens in
Yeah.
here.
I realize I'm just really, really immature about some things. And she's like, yeah, you totally are really immature about some things. And I'm like, okay, cool. At least we're on the same page. And now I can work on that. you know?
Right. And it's
Yeah.
so much better than making up a story about why she did that or you did that or what's happening, or now he must not like me because he's throwing a temper tantrum, or now I have to step in and be his mom because he's throwing a temper tantrum. Like, instead of making up a
Yeah.
story, like, oh, okay, he needs to have a fit right now. Cool. I'm
Yeah.
going to sit here and I'm going to honor that piece of him.
Right. And neither one of us can just say, you know what, I'm gonna bounce because this is too much drama. I'm out. And then where are you? You're wandering through life and you still don't have that connection. You still don't have that security in your life that, like you said, we need so desperately as humans. And this is kind of where we got off the tangent a little bit with the materialism, is that part of seeking the kingdom, part of seeking that extra ethereal thing is recognizing the fact that we're humans. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mhm.
And a big part of that is that connection.
Mhm.
And so being what I was starting to say earlier is like being materialistic isn't just about money and cars. It's about people and this body and the house and the minor things and what's on Netflix and like that's all materialism as well, right? I think that's what I was trying to get at earlier.
Right. And I think it's also falls to what's your intention around having material items. Is it
Mm,
to fill a hole that's not being met? So
mm,
coming out of that place of maybe we need a little deeper exploration into us, like the people that they call it like shop therapy or whatever. Well, I feel better temporarily. I get that dopamine rush, or I go on TikTok real quick. I get that dopamine rush, so that
mm,
part of me can get fulfilled. But really, what can be fulfilled underneath that? So I don't need that hit so often, right?
mm,
So, but then also with materialism, we also get to remember that um, what is the intention? Is the intention to have more stuff for me, or is the intention that the more I grow, the more I can give back to my
mm,
friends, my family, to my kids, to my like whatever, to the culture, to people that are homeless, like whatever that is. That how are we actually? What are we? What's our intention around getting more? And not that we have to be super altruistic all the time, because sometimes we like, I want a boat to make me happy and take out my friends to make them happy. Like that can be
yeah,
okay. Like there's no judgment around that.
yeah. Are you familiar with Teal Swan?
I love Teal Swan.
Yeah, she's my spiritual little sister,
Yeah.
but like maybe kind of a spiritual big sister, even though she's younger than me. I'm not sure. Anyway, um, yeah, I've been following her for I, I don't know. I remember seeing her first videos back when she was still in the spirit science days with those guys. But anyway, she has a new path that she's going down, I guess you could say, where she's talking more about like the true nature of men and women and how our modern conceptualization of feminism just isn't working. And more women are starting to move away from that because they realize that um, I what I had heard, I forget who said this. I forget exactly where I heard this the first time, but my mother's generation, the version of feminism that they got was that if they wanted to be free from the patriarchy, then they needed to be tyrannical like their fathers and fuck like their brothers, and that's what would set them free. And I think that, well, I mean that's just got to create some weird cognitive dissonance. But the thing that what you're saying about we were talking about relationships reminded me of Teal Swan said something recently about how women, when they have that, when they're in their full feminine energy, when they have the containment that they need, when they have um the resources and the safety and like all those sorts of things that have to be in place, they end up being like just like an outflow of giving, right? And like there's that old joke that uh if you give a woman some food, she'll make you a meal. If you give a woman, a house, she'll make you a home. If you give a woman your seed, she'll give you a child. And then if you give a woman grief, it's just you're gonna have a nightmare, buddy. So because that's what that sacred feminine does, is it takes the fundamental thing and then makes it flourish into something more. It brings you back something more than what it was, and that's the natural tendency of that sacred feminine. And I wonder about your especially as it pertains to relationships these days. And we got like 10 minutes left. Um, how would you agree with that? I mean, do you see that kind of same thing in your work, that there are just a lot of young women out there who just don't feel fulfilled because they haven't learned how to tap into that energy within themselves,
Mhm.
and to be able, or that they know that that's there and they want to be able to give that to somebody, but then they don't see anybody there who knows how to receive it? Or what are your thoughts on what's happening in that kind of world?
May I tell you a story about that?
Sure.
So I have this great, so my parents are still together, 50 years. And my dad, I was a little bit of a tomboy, and my dad was always like, I don't want you to have to be dependent on a man. And my mom was like, very much like, your dad's sister can't support herself, blah, blah, blah. She's always relying on her husband, so on and so forth. So you need to be a strong, independent woman. Right.
Mm,
So that was the training that I got. And then I could do anything I want. Like, it all came from a very loving, supportive place, not from a negative place, not an anti-man place, but very much like, we want you, in case shit hits the fan, to be able to support yourself, balance your own books, do your things, right?
mm,
So and my dad was construction worker. I worked construction with him often. And so even though I also did massage, so I had this very feminine, flowy massage, artsy, love, compassion, but also like, I can put together a house. I know how to run electrical.
mm,
I know how to do a roof. Like, so I'd get into these relationships, and unconsciously, I didn't even know I was doing this. I would kind of test, like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? If they broke their word to me, or they said, hey, I'll do that, and they didn't do it, or they let me down in some big way. And I'm not talking about big like cheating. I'm talking about like, oh yeah, I'll totally do the dishes so you don't have to do them. And then the next day I come back and like everything's still a hot mess. And I'm like, you said you do that, like that kind of thing. What I would do
mm,
is I would flip immediately into my masculine, and I'd take
mm,
over everything. I would run the masculine and the feminine parts of the household.
mm,
I'd stop trusting them with anything. And then I'd get angry. And then I'd be
mm,
like, why the hell am I in this relationship if I have to do everything, and I break up with them? And then I'd be angry
mm,
at them for not doing anything, but I wasn't allowing them to do anything anymore anyway.
mm,
Never healed that piece of me. So once I started watching Teal Swan, and then other things as well, like other insights and awarenesses in when I started learning how to be in a relationship where I allowed that, what she calls the positive containment, right?
mm,
Like, I don't have to be supported by a man, but I get to be.
mm,
Like, I'm actually more independent, more strong, able to do more in my business because I have someone that supports me wholly and fully, and that I can trust to do, that I can
mm,
trust to be that structure for me, right? So I think about it like the banks of a river,
mm.
right? He's there as the banks, and I'm just flowing within, and I'm doing what I need to. And sometimes I break out a little bit, and I'm like, I'm going to do my own thing. And that's great. He's like, cool. Like, you're going to come back when you need to, or, I'm just here for you holding space. And then I kind of come back and I do, so I think where we've broken out as society is that, and I know this is a really long answer to your question. Yes, short answer. Yes, I'm seeing exactly all of that. And this polarity of, as we've gone from one spectrum to the another, now we're coming back towards the middle, but the messaging is still dissonant. Well, you
Mm.
need to be a strong woman and independent and boss bitch babe. No, you need to be feminine and soft. Oh, and by the way, hopefully you haven't had too many sexual partners yet, because then no guy will want you. But wait, if no guy
Mm.
wants me, don't I have to be independent, strong, boss bitch babe? Well, no, because if you do that, and so there's this
Yeah.
like, there's also this like, well, what am I supposed to be then? They're saying
Mm.
I should be this, they're saying I should be that. I don't know where to be.
Right. Yeah.
Okay to like express my sexuality, or no? And so is it
Mm.
okay to like drop into masculine for a bit when I need to? Right. So where is that masculine feminine flow? Same thing with men, right? They're dealing with the same thing. Wait, am I
Mm.
supposed to be allowed to feel my emotions, or do I have to be strong male structure, or how do I do both? So I think right now, both women and men are like, where am I supposed to be? Well, this isn't working. Well, that's not working. And
Yeah.
I think we're trying to find the middle right now,
Well,
you
and a
know?
lot of the younger generation, like they see all this storm back and forth, and they're like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to use plural pronouns now because you
Yeah.
guys can't figure it out. So maybe I'm just both. Right?
Yeah.
Just gonna cut to the chase. I'll be both. life is great, you know. I mean, yeah, because it is. I mean, I find that in my relationship with Kelly, because I've said this for a long time that within a healthy relationship, somebody has to be um you have to find a balance between the masculine and feminine energies in a relationship, right? But and if you're, how do I say this? So in a lot of ways, like, you know, I've got like the testosterone and the shoulders and all that stuff, and I provide, you know, I bring in all the income and I provide a home for Kelly, and you know, so I, you know, fulfill all those masculine roles. But I'm more like dreamy and I want to have conversations, and I'm like, you know, I'm like the feeling, and you know, like nurturing. I'm like that part of it, you know. And Kelly is just like like business, 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 you know. But then she's also just like very just like attractive and, you know, put together, and she's very, you know, she likes her nice things, and she, you know, she's also, so she fills that feminine role. But then there's a place within our relationship, and I used to struggle with this, where I'm like, no, I'm just more nurturing than you are. That's just how it is, you know. I'm more, and or I'm not as like, you know, cut and dried and step by step and this and that as you are. So it's okay for me to just allow her to, you know, take that role and do it, because I'm still providing the containment for her to flow within, you know, the place where she needs to be. And then, but then she takes care of those like step by step, like, you know, we have to do this and take care of blah, 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 you know. And I'm kind of like, I'm going to have a conversation about it. I'm going to, you know, kind of feel this out. But it ends up being this like wonderful kind of yin yang dance that we have, you know, of putting all that together. Um, but we are coming up on your hard stop right now. So one last time, tell me about your website. Do you have any specials coming up? Do you have anything like that that you want to plug real quick?
Um, so one of the things that I'm doing right now is people can, so I do emotional freedom techniques. Tapping is one of the tools. I love teaching people how do you manage your emotions, your body, and your nervous system very quickly and effectively. So you
Mm-hmm.
can find that free course at unifiedmind.info/EFT self-care. And that has a form you can fill out to get the free class. So there's no dash in that. It's unifiedmind.info/EFT self-care.
Okay.
Then they have an opportunity. There's, of course, an upsell to do community memberships where I have videos, hypnosis tracks, education, book summaries, suggestions, meditation walks, all kinds of different resources that people can have full access to for $11 a month. So that's my special right now. That'll go up August 1st. That'll go up to 22 for each of them. But because I'm doing the thing of like, well, I don't think there's enough content in there yet, so I don't really value what I have in there yet. You've got so much crap in there. Like you've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of stuff that, no, I need to have X amount of videos. So I'm doing the masculine
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
right
yeah.
now. Like, no, I must have X amount of videos and have it structured before I can charge full amount, you know. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. I honor that I'm and we're at, but that's the offer that I'm doing right now.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Okay. I'll make sure to add that in there. Well, thank you very much for your time. This is an awesome conversation. And as we're talking, I was thinking about 10 other things that I wanted to talk to you about. So we'll definitely have to rebook something. So
Love it.
thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hang I gotta take care of something real quick here.
Sounds good.
Come here. Gigi. Come here. Come on. Come on. This is this is Gigi.
Hi,
Can you say
Gigi.
hello?
Hi.
She she's been pawing at me, and are you okay? She didn't get her cuddles this morning.
All
So
right.
yeah, so she's a little bit jealous right now. Are you okay? Better? Did you bring me a toy? What'd you bring me? She she brings me toys, and it's a little
Oh, that's fantastic.
you okay? Can you get it out of your system now? All right. All right. Here. It's Lilo, that's his name. Or no, Stitch. All right, are you okay? Can you say hello? No? All right. Get out of here, silly. It's okay. Everything's fine. All right. So Gigi, her name's Gigi, and she is, let's see, she's Min Pin, Chihuahua, and Shih Tzu mix. So we call her a mini chew shit. She
I love it.
but she gets really excited whenever I come home, and
Mhm.
she bites at me. She nips at me. I try to pet her, and she bites my hand because she's excited, and she's, she got that little tiny brain, and she's all heart and no brain, which is great. So I trained her from the time she was small that whenever I get home, she needs to go grab something soft, and then I'll pet her. So she describes like whatever is closest, and sometimes she'll show up with like, a little Stitch toy or some dirty underwear somehow. Just like, I have no idea what she's gonna bring to me every day. But
But the
she
training
just,
works. There you go.
she's like, it's a soft thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know why he wants this dirty underwear, but apparently he does. So I'll bring it to him.
I love that.
So yeah. Anyway.